John, we've got a somewhat unusual show in store for viewers today. How you feeling tonight?
I feel really well, thank you. Feel
That's
very
good.
well.
Oh, yeah. How's your swollen glands doing?
Yeah, we figured out what that was. So when I did a little bit of research, and I thank everybody for all of their concern, I did a little bit of research into it, and it turns out it's nothing at all. I'm in the midst of having some dental work done,
Oh,
and the dental work that I'm doing is causing the inflammation. So that's what that's about. So
all right. Glad to
totally
hear it's
expected. Yeah, totally expected. Dentist said, yeah, of course. So
all
cleared
right.
that up.
Good. And also, before we get into the show, I know you've got some interesting things planned for us. I always like to remind everybody they can watch our simulcasts on the John E. Hoover YouTube channel. The channel is growing. John's at 31.1K subscribers. So, okay, good. 36. We had 33 watching a moment ago. But that's
Yeah.
a great way for people to watch the simulcast. And of course, just 30 minutes from now, we're going to have the sponsor exclusive portion of the show that's available on subscribestar.com/I am John Cullen, patreon.com/I am John Cullen, and Subscribestar and Patreon/crowdsource the truth. So, John, everybody is obviously commemorating 9/11 today. And, when you and I first met, it was the Vegas shooting that you were reporting on, and you've made no secret of the fact that prior to the Vegas shooting, you were a guy who just watched the news and thought everything they were saying was kind of what was going on, right?
For the most part, I had been to Dealey Plaza, and after visiting Dealey Plaza uh, and studying what I studied and reading some of Ole's work, actually,
Mm-hmm.
I came to the conclusion that there's just no way that that's what happened. And when you start to read these documents, like the Operation Northwoods document
Yeah.
from the government that's been declassified, you start to realize that Alex Jones was right from the beginning, right? And you had Alex Jones on your show this week, which was, phenomenal. I think that's the best interview he's ever had.
Wow.
I
Thank
think
you.
I think he comes away from that interview looking more cogent, more intelligent, more matter of fact than he has ever in any interview. I think that's the best interview he's ever had.
Well,
So
thank
hats
you.
off to you. Tip of the hat.
I
Yeah.
really, well, thank you, John. I appreciate the compliment, and I really appreciate Alex coming on the show. It's gotten, I would say, 99.8% positive comments and positive feedback from viewers. There's always the trolls in there, and the things that people, most of the negative comments, the overwhelming majority of negative comments that I've heard about Alex Jones are not accompanied with evidence. They're just disparagements and people accusing him of being a CIA agent and stuff. I don't know anything about that. He seems like a regular guy to me. He's a lot nicer to me than somebody in his position. Like if he was an LA guy and I was
Mhm.
trying to deal with him, I haven't had that kind of experience with people in LA. They generally are very standoffish. Alex has been warm, kind, inviting, even generous with me. He didn't have to give
Mhm.
me almost an hour of his time. So I want to thank him again and I appreciate Alex coming on the show. So, what do you got for us today, John?
Well, because it's the anniversary of September 11th, I thought that it might be apropos to do something rather special that I hadn't been planning on doing for some time. Um,
Now, before we do that, though, are we going to
right?
get to the story about, we did name this that time John Cullen had dinner with Bill Gates, and I know people want to hear that story.
Right. So that's what I mean. I hadn't planned on divulging that.
Uh huh.
However, because today is September 11th, it seemed apropos. And
Yeah.
the reason will become evident when we go to our patron only hour. So, and I'm going to make a sort of we're going to do a big reveal right now that people haven't heard. And that is, I've been working on a book about this particular this outbreak or two that we've been witnessing. And I've been writing this book now for, I don't know, 6 weeks, 7 weeks, something like that. And I'm at the point now where I'm not ready to sell the book, but I'm ready to talk about it.
Ah,
So there is a forthcoming book. There's an upcoming book from me, from John Cullen, and I'm going to read to our patrons the first page of
nice.
this upcoming book. This first page is relevant to the thumbnail and the title of the show. So this is about me and Bill Gates and a dinner that the two of us had together. And so I'm going to read from the first page of my new book on our Patreon
Great.
Only Hour. Just one page. So I'm not going to bore the hell out of you guys.
So people will hear that on Patreon and Subscribestar. That'll be cool. You've got something else planned for us for now, right?
Indeed. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of a guy named Alex Zemdegs. But before we get to our formal presentation and we review the coronavirus numbers and all that, I just somebody called to my attention that Netflix has put out a documentary on one of my heroes, and it's a guy named Alex Zemdegs. And for years, I've been fascinated with people that could walk into a room and in a matter of seconds establish that they're one of the best at what they do in the world in a matter, like in an instant, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so this is one of those people. Excuse me, Felix. I said Alex. Felix Simdix. So
Oh, Felix
Felix.
Alexander.
Oh, okay. So it's his middle name. So Felix Zemdegs is one of my heroes, and Netflix did a documentary about him. And I don't know if you've got a little YouTube clip or something that'll just show kind of people
Ah,
who he is and what he has done.
he's a
But he
Rubik's
is the
Cube expert.
yeah, yeah. And he came on the scene as a kid. He came on the scene like as a 10-year-old.
Dude, he's still a kid.
Uh,
He's 24.
yeah, but I mean, he came on the scene as, a 10-year-old, 11-year-old boy walks in and bangs out a random Rubik's cube in a time that nobody had ever seen before. Sets a new world record, right?
Wow.
So then, if you guys watch this documentary, along comes another kid named Max Park, and Max is like the only guy on Earth that can challenge Felix Mdx. Well, Felix, I think, has held more world records in solving the Rubik's Cube in history. And Max Park, I think, still holds the world record for solving the Rubik's Cube one-handed.
Wow. God,
And
that's crazy. How can you even turn it one-handed? I don't think
oh,
I've touched a Rubik's Cube since about third grade.
okay, well, tonight I'm going to attempt live in front of the audience to break Max Park's record. All right, so Max currently holds the Guinness record for, now this won't be official, right? Because I'm not using an official tap mat, which is how it's done.
What do you mean, lay
But
it down to set
there's
the
a
time?
special time. Yeah, there's a special timing mat and all that that's used for special world record stuff. But just for the purposes of entertainment, I'm going to attempt, and I probably won't break his record. I mean, he's the world record holder. The guy's the best in the world. If I get within a second or two, that would be pretty good.
Oh my
Right.
God,
So,
this kid was born after September 11th. He's 18.
yeah. And can you pull up footage of him doing it one-handed?
We're going to
I
get
think
dinged on
really,
YouTube if we do that. I
really.
mean, it's too much of a
All right.
risk, but we
All right.
can
The
believe
guy,
that this guy is doing it. He's here.
and so I encourage the audience, look him up, take a look at some of what he's done. He is remarkable, and he's another hero of mine. Love this kid. Love him. So,
Rubik's Cube
oh,
speed solver formerly
yeah.
held the world record average of 3 by 3 by 3 solves. 6.39 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, and he's in a movie called The Speed Cubers. Oh, that's
That's
the
what I'm talking
Netflix
about
movie.
on Netflix. Right,
Uh-huh.
right. So this is the documentary of these two kids.
I
And
see.
so the thing about a Rubik's Cube that the audience may not know is that from a color combination perspective, right, there are more arrangements of the tiles on a Rubik's Cube than there are atoms in the universe.
What?
Eh, Yes. And it sounds insane, but like the birthday paradox that we've talked about before, right? The birthday paradox that we've talked about, it only takes 23 people in a room for there to be a 50-50 chance that two of you have the same birthday, right? That's
Really?
called the birthday paradox, right? So the Rubik's Cube, in any different permutation of it, there's more possibilities than there are atoms in the universe. And if you made a turn every 1 second, 2, 3, right? If you did it like that, the amount of time since the Big Bang, there's more combinations. So if you turned it one time every second, uh, you haven't reached all the combinations as of now if you started at the Big Bang. That's how complex this is. So when these kids pick this thing up and are able to solve it in 6 seconds. In fact, in the documentary, what you're going to hear Max say is, 4 seconds is boring. He's at 4, right? He's in the 4s
I
now.
don't think I've ever solved a Rubik's Cube without breaking it apart and putting it back
Yeah.
together.
All right. So, if you've got a timer, I don't know if you've got a spare iPhone
I
sitting around
do.
or something like
Yeah.
that. All right. I am going to attempt to see if I can do a one-handed and see how close I can get to Max's record. All right.
Okay.
So I've
Tell me
had.
when to start the timer.
All right. I will tell you. All right. So, tell you what. Why don't you give me a countdown and give me like a 3, 2, 1. Can you
3?
guys see this?
Yeah. 3?
Okay. One-handed.
Just careful, don't bounce the camera. 3, 2, 1.
Done.
Oh, come on now. First of all, that was 9 seconds, but how do we know that you didn't have it preset to something that would solve instantly?
Didn't you just watch me screwing around with the damn thing for 10
It's
minutes?
pretty good, John. He says this
All
is a
right.
Russian trick, according to
How?
Joey K.
So when we get to our patron-only hour, I'm going to explain what it means to be trained in the art of deception.
Hmm.
Okay. Max Park's record is quite safe. And I'll explain exactly what just happened when we go patron only. All right. That was deception. This is why it's important that I'm able to see through things like that. I'm able to see the difference between something that looks real but isn't. Right. Now, the only people that should be able to tell what I just did are Rubik's Cube masters or magicians. Right. So if somebody like Max, if Max was watching this right now, he's shaking his head and he's going, "What? What?" And he's screaming because of what I just did. All right. And when we go patron only, I'll explain all that. All right. But the truth is, I did really just solve that Rubik's Cube in 9 seconds in one hand. Okay. And we'll talk about how I did that later. All right.
Huh.
Why don't we go to the deck that I prepared?
Right. Oh, I see. I was so mesmerized by the YouTube thing. Oh, there we go.
It's
No,
a
I did
fast
have it open. Yeah,
and
there it
it's a
is.
fascinating story. I really encourage the audience to check it out.
The
The
Rubik's
story,
Cube movie.
yeah, it's phenomenal.
Okay. Can you see the screen share?
Let's see. Yeah. The other thing that we're going to share when we go patron only, um, let's see. We had Adam Curry had two big breaks this week on his podcast.
Oh, really?
And I've got some little audio clips of him talking about two major aspects of the story. And we're going to talk about that. So I've got those audio clips queued up and ready. We're going to play those when we go patron only. But let's go through the deck, and I'll explain to everybody what the show is going to be tonight, both on YouTube and for our patron only hour when we go to Subscribe Star and Patreon. All right, so we're going to once again look at the pundits' forecasts versus my depletion of susceptibles concept and where we're headed with all that, right? So that's where we're going to begin. All right, bottom line up front. What are you guys going to hear tonight? Dr. Fauci had influenza this season.
He had it personally himself?
Yes.
How do you know that? All right, we'll talk about it on the Patreon part.
Adam Curry, right? So
really?
Adam Curry, yeah. So Adam Curry and John Dvorak play a clip with Dr. Fauci where Dr. Fauci, after his surgery, is talking about the fact that he had influenza. Wow. The other thing that Adam Curry breaks this past week that's fantastic is a story where a man receives test results back for his wife who died 6 months ago, saying she's tested positive for coronavirus. And he's like, she died in February.
It's weird.
And you're sending us a letter now. So we're going to play that audio clip. So those two audio clips are the pieces I've got queued up from Adam Curry. So huge breaks, stuff you're not going to hear elsewhere. Pretty interesting stuff.
I like Adam Curry.
Oh, he's another hero, man. He was like the original podcaster before everybody.
Right.
And the guy's like a technical genius. You know, after MTV, he really got into tech. He's a hero of mine. I love the guy. And I'll tell you what, he's right on the verge of this stuff. He's asking a lot of the right questions, but I don't think he's seen our material. I don't think he's seen these statistics, because if he did, he'd be falling out of his chair. So
send it to him.
But yeah, I love him. If anybody in the audience is an Adam Curry producer, let's see if we can cross-populate here. I mean, I know you'd love to have him on the show, right? If we could get him. All right, so guys, you are all.
He's got to be on Twitter. I bet you could just. I'll try and reach him.
I'm not on Twitter. But for all of you out there, you're deputized. You're allowed to invite Adam Curry onto the show. We'd love to have him and share this stuff because he's awesome.
Yeah, here he is on Twitter.
Yeah, I'm not on Twitter. They kicked me off.
But I wonder if this is him. It doesn't have a check mark. And anyway, back to this.
All right, so we're going to look at the data, as we always do in our YouTube pre-show, and just review where we stand, what are the ratios, looking at the CDC's numbers, right? That's all we're using as our source, is CDC statistics. That's it, and we're just charting them. So I download their data, and I make it look pretty. So we're going to look at that tonight. So let's go to the next slide, and we'll get into the specifics. All right, so this was the big hullabaloo a week or two ago, which was the comorbidity data. And what we've done is we've used the comorbidity breakouts to figure out how many of the coronavirus deaths have had 2.6 comorbidities, how many of them had influenza, how many did not have influenza, and how many of them died of just COVID with no comorbidity mentioned whatsoever. And so the new data that we've discovered and have mapped out is giving us these answers. It's giving us answers to these questions. And this is allowing us to get further into the specifics and the details of this epidemic, right? So let's go to the next slide. All right, one of the things that we pointed out, I think it was on our patron-only show a week or so ago, but now for this audience, I want everybody to understand, the CDC's website is now showing us how many people died with COVID and did not have influenza. And what that allows us to figure out is how many people died with COVID and influenza. And so this week, as they updated their data, they're showing us that of the 178,670 people that died with COVID, 79,000 of them did not have influenza, meaning just about 100,000 did. Okay? Makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
So if 79,900 people did not have influenza of the 178, well, that means about 100,000 people did have influenza and COVID. and that's called a derived value. And we explained that last week. So we use these derived values to drive a lot of the charting that I'm doing here. So let's zoom out, take a look at the next slide and see where does this take us. So from there, I'm able to build this chart that you see in the lower right. We're going to zoom into it later. I've got more detail on another slide, but just kind of showing you guys, I develop these worksheets based on the CDC's data, and then I just do simple math. Like when they tell you, here's the total number, and here's how many don't have it, well, then we can easily figure out how many do. We just subtract the two. So that's derived values, and that's deductive reasoning, right? We know that you either do have it or you don't have it. It's an A or B proposition. So because of that, that's deductive reasoning, right? We don't have to use inductive here. So we get these kinds of numbers. So let's go to the next slide and see what this means specifically. So what is this telling us? Well, a couple weeks ago, I told everybody that I believed we had reached depletion of susceptibles and that we were now going to see the entire outbreak trail off, and that by October 31st, the United States should be at about 100 people per week dying, give or take. Okay, so it might be 120, might be 80, but I'm thinking we're going to be at about 100 people dying per week around October 31st, right before Election Day in the United States.
Right.
All right, so that was my projection. So now, today's September 11th, we're going to take a look at how are we doing against my projections, right? Are we tracking
Yeah.
or we're going the wrong way? So let's take a look at the next slide and see what we got. All right, so now we're looking at the most recent update from Reuters. This is Reuters
Ooh.
data.
Wait, it's even more steep of a decline than you predicted.
Well, again, I'm not going to pat myself on the back or anything yet. We're just going to watch it. Let's just see what happens, right? So there was a bit of a spike today because of the Labor Day weekend or something. So I guess they didn't report for 3 days, and so it spiked up the day they all came back on Tuesday. So that explains the spike there. But the net of it is we're still following that depletion of susceptibles. Right? We're following that. It's still trailing off. It's getting better, not worse, when we measure using deaths. And measuring using deaths is the only thing that really matters. As soon as no one is dying,
right,
cases and tests and all that stuff becomes window dressing. I want no one dying. That's what I'm playing for here, right? So let's go to the next slide.
Yeah.
All right, this is a dashboard. We've talked about key performance indicators, critical success factors, and dashboards before when I was making fun of the World Health Organization's inability to manage the outbreak. The fact that they weren't looking at Nigeria, they weren't looking at Bangladesh, they weren't looking at India and Pakistan, I felt was criminal. Well, what we're looking at here is the United States up top, and then in the 2 rows below the United States, we're looking at the states that have kind of been in the hot seat. So we're looking at, it should be like California, Arizona, Florida, Texas, and then I think I added New York and New Jersey just for fun because they had such a terrible go of it.
Yeah.
So when you look at these states, what you see is Florida is getting better. Texas is getting better. Arizona is getting better. New York has almost nothing going on. New York, top row, right side, there's nothing happening. Nobody's dying anymore. You look at Texas, it's trailing off. It's trailing off everywhere that was a hot spot. Right? So there's New York, right? California's tapering down.
Yeah.
Texas tapering down, Florida tapering down, Arizona tapering down. All the places that were supposed hot spots a couple of weeks ago that everybody was freaking out about.
Really going down in Florida.
Right. There's
Texas looks like it was never that high to begin with compared to the others.
And then New Jersey, there's nothing happened in New Jersey. A week ago, nobody died. Right. So I think again, contrary to what some people want the public to believe, we have reached the depletion of susceptibles, and we are watching this thing trail away. It doesn't mean that, people who are susceptible shouldn't be careful, right? We're not minimizing that in any way, right? If you are susceptible, if you have COPD, if you have emphysema, by all means, you got to be careful of both of these epidemics that are going on, right?
Yeah.
But the good news is that most of the people that have been susceptible to this virus have gotten sick and gotten better. That's what's happened to most people. Actually, most people were asymptomatic. More people were asymptomatic than people got sick, right? Because 5.5 million, 6 million people didn't get sick. All right, so let's go to the next slide.
Yeah,
All right,
this guy.
so last week we shared with our patrons on Patreon and Subscribestar this resurrection of the Spanish flu, and we had a couple PhD guys explain to everybody how this all happened. And so I just want the YouTube audience to know this is not a conspiracy type thing. In fact, I think I heard Adam Curry said in one of these clips when I was listening to him, he said, "I'm a conspiracy therapist, not a
Yeah.
conspiracy," right? So I thought that was genius. So again, this happened. This resurrection of H1N1 happened. We've been documenting it here. And what you're going to hear tonight is that Dr. Fauci himself had influenza this season. Fascinating. So the question that Adam Curry asks is, did Dr. Fauci have the vaccine and it didn't work? Or did Dr. Fauci not have the vaccine?
That's a good question for stupid
Because
Fauci.
so the answer is either A or B. Again, there's no easy way out here for Dr. Fauci.
That's a double
So
bind for Fauci.
that's exactly right. So when we get to our patron only hour for Subscribestar
Oh,
and
wow.
Patreon,
Wait, you've just reminded me we have only 2 minutes. We've got to
we got to go.
roll
Yeah.
over there.
And we're going to show everybody what happened with the Rubik's Cube. And I'm going to read the first page from the new book called The Pandemic Illusion by John Cullen.
Wow. It's an exciting topic for a book, John. We'll be right over there in just under 2 minutes. I took my eyes off the clock and look at how time flies. Thanks for watching, everybody. Join us on Patreon and Subscribestar. We'll be back in just 2 minutes.